Liquigas sprinter Daniela Bonatti snatched the leader's jersey away with a win on stage 3. But with the first legitimate day of climbing on deck, the lead is poised to change once again. Hi everyone, and welcome to our stage 4 coverage of Tirreno Adriatico, the race of the 2 C's. Steve Schlanger, Todd Gogolski, and Gogo. This marks the first of 3 consecutive days of pretty hard racing.
Everybody really expects the overall classification battle to get turned on its head the next 3 days, Steve.
This was the scene earlier today in the start town of San Giamini. Tom Bonin, the Belgian sprinter, won stage number 2, but today's profile does not lend itself to a field sprint, so Bonin may sit this one out. But some other big names rolling towards the start line. Alessandro Ballan, the former world champion, new signing for BMC. There's Filippo Pozzato, the former winner of Tirreno Adriatico, and he's been riding well here so far at this year's race. Well, it's the longest stage of this year's Tirreno Adriatico at 243 kilometers, and it ends with an uphill finish.
Steve, 150 miles plus in length, starting in San Giamini and ending in Chieti. And I have to say, it really begins today. First of 3 tough days with a lot of climbing. The final 12 miles today being the toughest of the day, and the final 4.5 miles, a stair-step climb to the finish in Chieti with cobblestones to boot.
Final climb has a max grade of 19% and a steady 15% near the finish. This is the GC after 3 days of racing. The sprinter Daniela Bonatti holding a 4-second lead over Gerdeman and Bonin. However, Cadel Evans, 13 seconds behind for BMC, probably the highest profile GC man near the top of the standings. And here is the profile for today's very difficult stage number 4, the 243 kilometers, and they've already covered quite a bit of it. The green line indicating where the racers are right now. There's just about 24 kilometers left to ride, and there is a group of 6 riders just north of 3.5 minutes ahead of the main field.
It's been a tough day for these guys. They got off about 35 kilometers into the race. They're at about kilometer 200 right now, but unfortunately for them, there's still 24 kilometers to go, and these may be the toughest kilometers of the entire bike race, as we just said. So these guys have the work cut out for them, but they still have a shot at it, Steve.
These are the names of the boys in the break. They're on a climb now, and they still have 2 more climbs to go. So that's a lot of difficult uphill racing inside the final 25K on the day.
Yeah, a little bit unusual, actually. Right now they're climbing, and as soon as they climb up here another couple of K, they have an intermediate sprint. But you might think it would be a mountain sprint because they're climbing to get up to it. Typically those intermediate sprints are on flatter terrain. But they have to fit them in here somewhere, and it just happened to be the way it worked out on today's profile.
Just about 23.5K left to go. And Gogo, the primary theme for today's stage 4, really the fact that the GC standings could likely take their first big hit.
Yeah, so far we've had 3 days that the sprinters really thought they had a chance to contend for, with Bonatti winning yesterday with a terrific ride. But today we know that not only is this break threatening the overall, but even if this break can't stay away, that final climbing pitch up to the finish will wreak havoc on the field.
And this is back to the main field and a little more single file now, as it's being led by the BMC squad as well as Aqua e Saponi. You have to believe that BMC is riding for the world champion Cadel Evans, who I mentioned at the top is a little more than a dozen seconds back right now, so he's very much in the picture for the overall general classification. Aqua e Saponi may be looking for a stage win today, and they also have Stefano Garzelli in their mix, and he finished 2nd in last year's edition.
It's really nice to see the BMC guys on the front here. I actually spoke just before we came on the air with Jim Ockowitz, the co-owner of that team. He's back in the caravan in the team car. And he said that they were going to start sending their guys up to the front pretty soon because they were really concerned about the strength of this break, with guys like Pozzato on the front there, and right behind him, Vasil Kirienka. So things are heating up in the peloton, there's no doubt about it.
Headed towards the intermediate sprints here, led by Pozzato. You see him in the white there, and with the stripes horizontally across his chest, indicating he is the Italian national road champion, and also, as I mentioned earlier, the former winner of Tirreno Adriatico back in 2003. So interesting to see him in this break.
Well, you know, the other thing about Pippo Pozzato is that he's a winner of Milano-San Remo, which comes up next week, in 1 week from today, and he also has been 2nd in that race. So he's done well here. He's done well at San Remo, which is a big monument of cycling. He's always on good form this time of year.
That man in the yellow there is Paolo Longo Borghini, the Italian for the ISD squad. He was part of an original break, and he's been dropped. It was initially a 7-man break for most of the day. As Borghini dropped out, it's now a 6-man breakaway, and the Italian about to be absorbed by the peloton with just under 23K to go. The lead of our 6-man breakaway now down under 3 minutes. They are still on the climb here, led by Vasil Kirienka, the Belarusian for Caisse d'Epargne. Pozzato just behind him, and one of the riders having a mechanical issue. That's Marco Frapporti, the Italian from the Colnago squad. Something happening, and the car pulling up right behind him, so he's losing time now on this climb.
It looked as though something pretty abrupt happened. He may have put his rear derailleur into the spokes of his wheel, and the car behind him just barely hitting the brakes before they kind of ran up over his back wheel. Hopefully he will be getting a quick bike change and back into this breakaway group. Vasily Kirienko here just continuing to set the tempo here, and we really just keep seeing these two guys. Kirienko in the front, the Belarusian, and the Italian, Filippo Pozzato, behind him, doing most of the work here. They seem to be the strong men driving this.
Now they're coming up on the final 22 kilometers, and still 2 more climbs to go, so very unpredictable in terms of what might happen. But considering the names that are in this group, and especially Pozzato, as you get another glance right here at what happened to Frapporti. But Gogo, what about the chances of somebody from this group perhaps stealing the stage and staying away?
I think it's certainly possible. The biggest challenge for them is that they've been off. When they get to the finish, they'll have been off to the front for over 200 kilometers. That's about 125 miles. And when you look at that, their legs are going to be so thrashed that they're not going to have a lot of sting to really punch it up those final climbs. And back here in the field, you can really see there are 2 teams at the front. The predominantly red is BMC, and then the red with the white pockets and a little bit of white in the upper back is Acqua Sapone. So an American team, BMC, and an Italian team, Acqua Sapone, both saying, we really need to take charge here because this breakaway looks very dangerous.
George Hincapie in there for the BMC team a few wheels back, but he's wearing the stars and stripes as the U.S. National Road Champion. See the clock continuing to count, lower right-hand corner of your screen, to indicate what the time gap is from the leaders back to the main field as they close in on 21.5K left to go. So the clock's still counting. Hincapie has had a very difficult week. He says that his legs haven't felt all that good. He's been battling a cold since he arrived in Europe, and he almost missed out on getting to the start of this race in time. Was supposed to arrive in Italy on Monday, had to wait a day because of an epic snowstorm back in Girona, Spain, where he lives during the season. They had some 20 inches of snow. They haven't had that much in 4 decades, and then because all of the communications were down, transportation was mixed up, he had to sort of cobble together his route to make it from Spain to Italy, and just got here the evening before the race started.
Well, Hincapie's teammate, big Marcus Berghardt, on the front there for BMC, and he is really throwing it down here right now. You can see how much guys are starting to hurt here, and Berghardt pushing a huge gear. He's really a classic specialist. He's won big classic races like Gent-Wevelgem, but he's also won a stage of the Tour de France in his career, and he's been pretty good already this year. He's new to this team this year. He's one of the new signings, and I think we're going to see a lot of good things out of this squad.
Now the BMC team really wanting to show their strength as we're back to the leaders now, who are on the descent of the climb as they come up on the last 20K of the race. And these are the guys who took the intermediate sprint points, Kirienko, Pozzato, and Ifimkin. But BMC still looking to get into some of the bigger races, so even though they have some marquee names on their roster, they're not a sure bet to get into some of the more prestigious races, so they need to have some results early in the season.
But it's part of the reason they have such a loaded team here in Tirreno Adriatico, because they want to make sure that they are invited to the Tour of Italy coming up. So they sent all their firepower. Cadel Evans, George Hincapie, Alessandro Ballan, and we just saw Marcus Berghardt as well. So really a stacked team for those guys.
So 2 minutes, 20 seconds back to the main field. That includes the Maglia Azzurra, the blue overall leaders jersey. That's being worn by Daniela Benatti of Liquigas today. So we're under 20 kilometers left to go in the longest stage of this year's Tirreno Adriatico as they head on the road to the town of Chieti. Basically midway through the 45th edition of Tirreno Adriatico in stage number 4, and nearby in France, it's Paris-Nice. And here are the general classification standings after stage 6. Alberto Contador still the overall leader. It was Xavier Tondo of the Cervelo test team who won stage 6. Contador still holding on to a pretty good lead, and it was quite an eventful stage number 6 today. Had a 23-man break at one point that included some pretty big names like American Levi Leipheimer.
This is a Thimkin pulling off the front here right now, and actually just noticed on his right shoulder a bunch of dirt, so it looks as though he has gone down at some point in the stage. But back here to the field, it is still the big frame of Marcus Berghardt driving on the descent. Putting in a big effort right now to bring back this front group.
A little over 18 kilometers left to race, just about a 2-minute gap from the leaders back to the main field. And with this being the longest stage of this year's race of the 2Cs at 243 kilometers, no matter what happens, a lot of guys who make it through still feeling pretty good about their body and their form today will, I think, have a general sense of feeling good about their chances going to Milan-San Remo, because a day like today sort of approximates what they'll be in for coming up in just about a week's time. A lot of kilometers, a lot of climbing, a lot of unpredictable elements during the course of the day.
Yeah, certainly a really good day of training, if nothing else, even if you do end up not having a good result here today. And one thing I was just trying to look at, Steve, is the overhead of the TV motorcycle. I noticed yesterday it was getting in the way on the descent a little bit when Giannani was attacking the downhill, and I just saw Berghardt also coming up to and passing the motorcycle on the descent. So that TV bike is probably really getting on these guys' nerves right about now.
Now Frapporti, after the mechanical issue, has made it back on to this breakaway group, so it is 6 strong once again. Started as 7 earlier in the day. They've lost 1, still 6, and it's still Filippo Pozzato in that white jersey leading the group here. And Pozzato, the winner of Tirreno Adriatico back in 2003, Italian national road champion, and he no doubt has his eyes fixed on Milan-San Remo, the first monument of the cycling season, 1 week from today, in a race you can also see right here on Universal Sports as Mark Cavendish tries to defend his title. He is in this year's edition of Tirreno Adriatico. You wouldn't know it by the TV coverage because he's been suffering near the back most of the way.
That's certainly true. And actually, Pozzato said just a little bit ago that Milan-San Remo, Flanders, and Paris-Roubaix are big 3 goals of the year. Still Berghardt slaving away on the front right now.
The MC Acqua e Saponi, that's been the narrative at the front end of the peloton as they work to reel in this 6-man breakaway. Still some more climbing to go, so this stage far from decided with well over 200K already in their legs. So a very difficult Saturday in central Italy as they head towards the finish town of Chieti, just about 200K northeast of Rome. And the final 17K coming up. Long day in the saddle, coming down to the final 16 kilometers. Stage number 4, it was a very long transfer for the riders after stage number 3, early 9:30 a.m. start to the day. And now after several hours and over 200 kilometers, we're coming up on the penultimate climb of the day. And the gap to our 6-man breakaway is inching its way down, and the field, because of that break, is now starting to splinter. You see guys just not able to hold the pace on this second to last climb of the stage.
Well, the field's certainly getting ripped apart right now. Berghardt no longer on the front, but that was Acqua e Saponi up there, Faili, and his team leader Garzelli right on his wheel. This group we're looking at is back in the caravan, and they have already been pretty seriously dropped. And I think we're going to see some big time splits here at the end because there's a lot of very steep climbing here in these closing 16 kilometers.
Now this 7-day stage race in Italy is certainly one of the first good barometers of form and fitness every season. You think you're in shape, you think you've done the proper work over the winter and the early portion of the season, but you really never know for sure until you come to a race like this or Paris-Nice.
Trying to get a good look here at this group, but with the trees, don't see anybody of big note in there yet. And most of the, well, there's somebody of big note in the blue jersey just getting a tap on the back. That is the leader from yesterday, Daniela Bonatti.
And he won't be the leader after today. That blue jersey is going to go over to somebody else because Daniela Bonatti is going to have it slip away. He's losing a lot of time, but not to his surprise. He is a sprinter, so he probably didn't expect to keep it.
You know, the thing you've got to love, though, is that the Kestepan rider comes up behind him, touches him on the lower back and says, hey, you know, I'm sure you're really bummed out that you've been dropped, but good on you for taking the win yesterday and being in the jersey. Let's ride this in together.
That's always a sign of respect for the overall leader, no matter where he may be on the course. Now back up to our leading group of 6. There's Plazato in the white, riding just ahead of Vesela Kiriyenka in the Kestepan colors of orange, red, and black.
These two guys continue to be all over the front, doing the lion's share of the work, and you got to wonder if they just feel that good or if the other guys really just feel that bad.
Now when you have a group like this and you have the peloton that's in pursuit, as we go back to Daniela Bonatti, who is still struggling well off the pace here, and you still have one more climb to go, and by the way, that is not Fabian Cancellara of Team Saxo Bank, that is Daniela Bonatti, our overall race leader. But back to the group up front, it's very hard to stay away when you've already spent some 200 kilometers out front. You've been going over so many climbs, and you're going to have fresh legs coming up behind you in these final 15K. It makes it so difficult to make it stick to the line, as we see Alexander Vinokurov of Astana making a run here.
Nice to see Vino on the attack here, and it looks as though it's one of the Androni riders making his way up, and that is Jose Serpa Perez. So we have two guys now testing from the front of the field. Here's the replay.
Well, Vino launching a move, and even though he may be beyond his best years, anytime he charges this late in a race, you have to take it seriously.
You can see the field responding very quickly. That looks like the green of Vincenzo Nibali right behind Vino now has made a swift response, and now the field starts to stretch out, ladies and gentlemen.
It's those accelerations late in a race that really break the legs of some, and they test the instincts of others. Under 15K left to go. Boy, Vinokurov, his hallmark, his calling card over the years has always been his ability on any given day to be the best rider out there, to launch those late stage attacks that nobody can respond to. Several riders responding today, and now Perez
again
is going by not only Vino but everybody else.
Good to see it as this Androni Giocatori Di Giovanni squad continues to be very aggressive. And remember, this man is the teammate of last year's overall winner, Michele Scarpone. So these guys, they're a second-tier team below the very top. They're called Professional Continental, but they take Italian racing very seriously, and they're always coming out guns a-blazing.
Getting a pretty decent size gap, it looks like. We can't spin around and exactly see how far behind everybody else is at this point, but Perez no doubt looking very good here as we take you back to the move, as he looked and saw so many guys coming across, and it wasn't just him and Vinokurov anymore, so he said, I ain't gonna stick around for this. Come get me if you want. And these are the leaders he and everybody else is still chasing. And it's Vesela Kiriyenka, the man leading the way. There's just about 13.5K left to go. Now, Gogo, as you know, nothing hurts a rider like those repeated accelerations on a climb. When one rider attacks, you have to respond. Then you catch up. You would think you might get a break, but then somebody else launches, and it's those, not just the one acceleration, the repeated accelerations that really break you down.
Yeah, what happens with these guys is they go so deep into the red, like they're like basically blowing up to follow the attacks, and then they have to recover. But look here, we've got another Astana coming up, and that is not the form of Vinokurov.
Enrico Gasparotto.
Gasparotto making his way up. Now that's very interesting to see, because Gasparotto last year rode for Lampre and he didn't get any results. This guy's a very good bike racer, but they had him working all the time, slaving for Cunego. So he came over to this team, and Vino and he had a deal that he would get his chances in Tirreno Adriatico, in particular for stage wins, and he would ride for Vino in the Classics. So maybe that's why Vino was attacking a little earlier, to set him up.
And it looks like some riders are going off the front of our primary break of the day that is still at the head of the race here. So it's become pretty clear that The racers at the front are getting word that there's attacks coming from behind, and their gap is coming down extremely quickly, so some not content to ride with the group. They're deciding to go out on their own so they're not caught. Under 13K remaining.
That front group, I noticed Efimkin there, Pozzato was there, Kirienka was there, and it looked like Vinance as well for Quick Step were the four that remained.
It's always a very anxious, nervous part of the race as riders in the peloton may sense that they're going to miss the decisive move of the day. Guys are attacking, not wanting to be left behind, and then guys in the breakaway start to get nervous that they're about to be caught. They don't want to continue working together as one, so they start to attack one another.
So 1:15 now from the lead group back to the field. These two guys are just in between, Gasparotto in front and Jose Serpa Perez on the wheel of him.
The main field there coming up from the bottom of your screen, pretty much single file here with 12 kilometers left to get split all over the road.
So one thing to keep in mind here, Steve and everybody, is that we've got at this point over 140 miles in these guys' legs. Oh, that's Serpa.
Serpa Perez maybe coming in a little hot around the corner.
Oh, a little heart-stopping moment for him, but he's back up after a little dance. But everybody's really tired at this point, and you can see the losing it here.
Now Serpa Perez almost going into the flower pot on somebody's front porch as we come down to 11.5K left to go. The riders on the descent after 6 hours on the bike, a little more than 10.5 kilometers left to go in stage number 4, the longest stage of this year's Tirreno Adriatico at 243 kilometers. And remember, we still have an uphill finish with a maximum gradient of 19%. That's what's awaiting these riders who have already spent over 6 hours in the saddle today.
This front group looking really messy right now. A very tricky descent and the pavement pretty rough and patchy, but the group completely split up over the top of that climb. You can see a lot of guys scrambling to try and make their way back up to the wheels in front of them.
Now down under 10K left to go, and things always come apart somewhat on a descent, but even though we've had 6 men in the break for the majority of the last 20K or so, they're not going to be friends the rest of the day. We're going to start seeing the infighting, the attacks, as someone is going to sense that a stage win is there for the taking. Now this is Enrico Gasparotto of the Astana team. He came from the peloton not too long ago and is still in the midst of his attempt to bridge across to the leaders.
Well, he's had pretty good luck in this race over the years. In fact, in 2008, he finished 2nd overall before he really went into a lot of service work last year for Lampre. So we'll see if he can find some of that magic back that he had in 2008.
Sitting well down on the GC, trying to get a sense of where he is in the race in terms of who may be behind him, how far he still has to go to get across.
Yeah, he's clumped with that big group of riders that's all sort of has the pack time, and so, you know, these guys all looking to make some little advantage. And
now
this is our Italian in
Marco
the break.
Frapporti, the 24-year-old from the Volnago team, and it looks like he may be attacking his other breakaway companions here. He's getting a gap on him with 8.5K left.
Very interesting to see Frapporti really aggressive out here today. And this is after, recall, he got the mechanical early on one of the climbs, or earlier in our broadcast, I should say, not long ago. And he's now pretty much taking everybody to task. 4 men chasing it. It looks like the lone guy behind in the bottom of the picture is Efimkin.
Now this is one of several attacks that have come from within the 6-man breakaway. That's been part of the principal break on the day. Reporting not the first to attack this group, but we'll have to see if they can bring them back, and the chances that they will are pretty high considering we still have the uphill finish, so the road is not easy the rest of the way.
Well, Frapporti sitting up here and giving way to Pozzato, who may be giving him a couple of words there in Italian, shaking his head slightly like, hey, if we're going to make this work, we got to ride together. Kirienka second wheel, and a little bit of disorganization here. I wonder if they maybe will punch it right now and just say, hey, we're the 2 strongest guys, let's go for it. But no, in fact, it's Euskaltel's Ruben Perez gluing it back together.
Well, Kirienka right there and Pozzato in front of him. Those two have probably looked the strongest of the 6 men who have been in the break today. Kirienka there in front, Pozzato just behind him, then Perez in the orange, part of the Euskaltel squad. But Kirienka and Pozzato have been doing the lion's share of the work pacing this group since we've come on the air. And now closing in on the final 7 kilometers. Gasparotto still desperate to get across, hoping that he can become part of the mix, make it a 7-man breakaway, and give himself a chance at perhaps a stage win.
This is a really tough way to approach the end of the race, because he's out here in no man's land with 7 Ks to go, and they're just about to hit the last 4.5 miles of stair-step climbing, and he's been in the flats here in the wind with no relief, really draining his tank, so to speak, burning all his matches. And when he hits that climb, if he's not with these guys, he's going to have a tough time staying out front.
Yeah, you only have so much energy to use, and if you spend it all on the flats, you have the serious climbing coming up to the finish line, and you might not have enough left in order to pull out the victory. So the 6-man break is back together again. The uphill finish still to come in the final 7 kilometers of stage number 4.
This is what it's all about.
After spending the first 3 days in Tuscany, the Tirreno Adriatico race arrives in the Abruzzo region of Italy today, and now 6 kilometers left to go before the finish in Chieti. And it's 1 minute from our breakaway of 6 riders back to the main field. Here is the group of 6. They've been at the head of the race for quite a while now. Well over 6 hours and 200 kilometers in the books on this very difficult stage number 4. Could be a decisive day at this 45th edition of the Race of the 2 Seas.
Really, that group of 6 just then, Steve, not looking like faces of guys who think they're maybe going to make it to the finish. They look more like guys who are just riding it steady because they're so thrashed from being off the front for 120 miles.
And this is the peloton behind them. And this group has dropped a lot of guys along the way because of the rapid pace that has been maintained over the last several kilometers. 60 seconds up to the leaders right now. And a change at the head of the main field right now. For quite a while today, it was BMC and Aqua Saponi driving the train. Not so anymore. And now Vasil Kirienka, the Belarusian for Kesteparn, the 28-year-old, attacks his breakaway companions.
Well, here we get the replay of that attack. And, you know, Kirienka realizing that they're not going to stay away at this pace. That was a little too pedestrian, and he feels like it's time to soldier on his own and see what he can do.
Kirienka was 7th in Tirreno Adriatico 3 years ago. Won a stage at the Giro a couple of years ago, and a former Belarusian time trial champion. So he has some skills and some credits to his resume, but still not looking all that strong even after the attack.
And like many guys from the Great White North in his part of the world, he actually lives in Spain because he prefers a little bit of warmer climate to train over the winter months.
Wouldn't you?
I certainly would.
If you could live in Spain, you'd do it as well. Under 5.5K left to go. This is back to the front end of the peloton.
A couple of Liquigas there in the lime green now coming around to the front, but we did just have a bunch of the Androni Giocattoli riders on the front for Michele Scarponi. And sitting in third wheel, actually, that looks like Michele Scarponi.
And you see Kirienka on the left-hand side of your screen. What's left of the break on the right. And at the front of that break, it's Pozzato and Ruben Perez. It's Perez for Euskaltel in the orange jersey. As they come up on the final 5 kilometers, the road going back uphill. So much always happens on an uphill finish. The story doesn't play out the way you might expect, and guys coming from behind extremely quickly. They can swarm dropped riders in the blink of an eye.
Well, Perez here now sensing maybe he can try and make his way up to Kirienka, and he has gone clear of the other riders in that group that was in the chase. But really, if you look back here, that looks like Pozzato. Well, a little too far away to see, but basically the lead group is detonated at this point.
Perez is trying to get across to Kirienka, and you see the move being made from the peloton behind, but neither Kirienka nor Perez are looking that aggressive right now. It looks like the legs are tired after a very long day already, and now things are really changing in behind.
These 3 riders that were got in the middle of our screen look like they're moving very fast. That's Liquigas on the front. That's Androni Giocattoli second. The third rider there is a Colnago rider. We'll wait till we get a little bit closer to pick them out, but they're going by Pozzato.
So Pozzato's gone.
That's the form for sure. That's Scarpone on the front. That is definitely the defending champion, Michele Scarpone, and I believe that's Vincenzo Nibali second. Third is not, that is not Colnago, that's Astana, third wheel there.
But the pace being led by the defending Tirreno Adriatico champion, Michele Scarpone. Looking to get some help from Nibali, and he's not going to come through, it doesn't look like. But they're coming up on the back of Ruben Perez of Euskaltel right now, with 4.5 kilometers left to go.
Well, that group of four really moving fast out of the front of the field, and you can see the damage that's being done as various riders that they're coming through trying to sit on and just getting popped off like a bad habit. And right on the front is that is the Colnago rider who was in the breakaway earlier. Actually, that is not the guy who was in the break earlier. That is one of his teammates. That is the leader of the Colnago squad.
And this is Vasil Kiriyenko right now. Remember, he attacked his other 5 breakaway partners just a short while ago, but how much longer can he stay out there?
Speaking of attacks, look at Nibali going by Perez as he's putting down the big move right now, starting to show his hand just a little bit.
Vincenzo Nibali, part of a very decorated and talented liquid gas team at this year's Tirreno Adriatico. They also have Franco Pelizzotti. They have yesterday's stage winner Daniele Bonatti, who's wearing the overall leader's jersey today, although he is about to lose that, as we see Nibali's attack once again, blowing past Scarpone and everybody else here.
Nibali, a tall, lanky rider. That makes him easy to pick out here on these overhead shots, but you can see from the close-up of his face and his body language, he is putting himself through a world of hurt right now because he sees a huge opportunity to take over the lead.
Now, liquid gas has come to this year's Tirreno Adriatico with the intention of winning stages, also trying for the overall. And right now, Nibali is trying to reel in Vasil Kiriyenko, but look who's coming up to the back of Nibali. It's Michele Scarpone. So even though Scarpone was left behind just a moment ago, he didn't panic, and just like that, he's onto the wheel of Nibali.
He came across so fast, and we saw Scarpone making the late move yesterday that was eventually caught. But I have to say, for my mind, he is the strongest looking guy in the bike race. He looks very much in control.
And Scarpone comes to the front right now with 3.7 kilometers left to go. How far behind this man are they? Vasil Kiriyenko still out front. Look how steep the roads are getting. It maxes out again at 19%. There's a pitch of 15 right near the finish. And the other two, who were dropped by Nibali and Scarpone, slowly trying to claw their way back. But keep in mind something that's going on behind these guys. Cadel Evans, nowhere in sight. BMC was riding for him for the majority of the day. And now Scarpone has launched a move to get away from Nibali. He's going up, and he's about to pass Vasil Kiriyenko, who is blown.
Kiriyenko will have nothing to answer. Scarpone just smashing this climb right now. This is exactly what he did last year in the big stage where he took the win and the overall. Can he make it 2 years in a row?
Now Nibali really suffering as he tries to get up to Kiriyenko, but Michele Scarpone, the defending champion, hoping this is the winning move of the day. On the brief section of cobbles, the very steep pitch, the narrow roads in Chieti.
Always a pleasure to be going at 15 to 20% grades on the cobbles, but Scarpone is a master of these type of finishes. He's an explosive rider. He knows exactly how to do it.
Michele Scarpone, last year's winner, and he won with a somewhat similar profile over the 7 days as what we have this year. So this could be not only a winning move for stage number 4, this perhaps could be a very decisive move for the entire 7-day race.
Well, that's Domenico Pozzovivo, the Colnago rider we just saw catching up to Nibali, but Scarpone, no one able to answer his call right now as he has left everybody else.
Well, I mean, he's opened up a huge gap here with just a little over 3 kilometers left to go, and from the looks of the riders behind him, nobody's showing the strength to be able to get across and track him down.
Well, we've got a little flat section here. There's a little bit of reprieve for the riders, and then it kicks up really nasty in some cobbles, the final kilometer. So it is Nibali, and the man who just caught him once again is Pozzovivo for Colnago. and they are in the chase. Let's see if two guys working together can make a dent on Scarpone off the front on his own.
I think the big thing for them is the fact that they looked so ragged on that last climb, and they still have another uphill to go. So unless they find a second gear that they didn't have just a moment ago, it's going to be difficult to bring back Scarpone.
And look at that. That is Kirienka fighting back to the wheels right there of the two men in the chase. Amazing to see him making his way up to Pozzovivo. Scarpone looking very solid here right now.
And the points for the mountain sprint, however, Scarpone just has the finish line on his mind right now after 240 kilometers of riding. He's down to the final 2.3. He's got 3 riders trying to hunt him down, but Scarpone has looked the best by far of any of these riders left in the hunt for a stage win.
The amazing thing about Scarpone, we saw it last year as well when he won this race overall. He took 2 stage wins at the Tour of Italy as well. At the end of 150 miles, he's got 2 miles to go, and he still has that punch to get up those steep climbs like he just did when he just torched his breakaway companions.
Showing some tremendous early season form here. Michele Scarpone, under 2K left to go.
That's right about 1 mile from here to the finish. So Scarpone looking very good for a win. This is Nibali, the Italian, chasing. Right behind him in the blue, another Italian, Pozzovivo. The third man is the Belarusian Kirienka.
Now, Nibali is certainly not giving up hope of trying to pull out the stage win. But Michele Scarpone on the cobbles here is closing in on the finish. Less than 1.5 kilometers left to go. I think these boys just may run out of real estate.
Actually, Scarpone, not a very good time trialist, but on these punchy finishing climbs like this, he's one of the best in the world. And he's shown it last year. He's shown it again this year.
That's why Scarpone won last year's Tirreno Adriatico, because they didn't have a time trial, and that allowed him to win the overall. And same case again in 2010. There is no TT at this year's edition.
We had a TT last year, actually, because Cloden won that and he took the lead. But regardless, he managed to preserve enough last year, and he doesn't have to worry about that this year. The big difference here, Steve, is that last year Scarpone got the lead on stage 6 of 7, 1K to go for these guys, and they only had to defend the last day. If he gets the win today, his team has to defend for 2 really tough days to come.
And you wonder how much of a lead he is going to have. It looks as though he's riding away to the win in the final kilometer, but now it's a matter of getting as big a gap as possible, getting those seconds, getting the bonus time that'll allow him to try and pad a lead that'll make it easier for his team to defend.
Well, watch what happens once we get around this corner. This is where things really kick up one more time, just to slap these guys back down. And he is coming into that final 0.5 kilometer.
Michele Scarpone up out of the saddle here, climbing on, as you can tell, roads that are not that well paved here. But when you're riding by yourself like this, it really doesn't matter. Here's the group that's coming up behind, including Cadel Evans, the world champion.
That's exactly right. So that group behind Scarpone is about to get caught by a bunch of the big names. I saw Michael Rogers for HTC Columbia in there as well. That's Rogers on the back right of your screen.
Al Evans trying to preserve his position on the general classification, just 13 seconds down as the day started. But Michele Scarpone is going to have the gap as he looks over his shoulder. Coming down to the finish. They're not going to be able to get him here. He's down to the final few meters. There's the finish line in the distance, and with a #1 as defending champion on his back, Michele Scarpone crushes the first real climb of Tirreno Adriatico and snags stage 4 in the town of Chieti.
He is really in a league of his own. Let's see what happens here for the second place sprint. This is Nibali off the back. Look at this. It's the Frenchman, Vaugrenard, and it looks like
he's raising his arms. He thinks he won the stage.
He's either really happy for second, or he thinks that they actually caught everybody that was in the break.
Well, it was very confusing because the roads were so narrow and twisting, a lot of cars and people and buildings, so your view was obscured coming up. So it's very possible he could have thought that he won the stage there.
Well, it's really nice to see once again Michele Scarpone crushing it here as he zips up his jersey. Victory salute, typical style for him. Usually just one right arm, sometimes with the finger up. Very understated.
Here are the stage results as Michele Scarpone with a decisive win. Cadel Evans, 17 seconds off the pace. We saw him trying to inch his way back there late in the stage, but he's going to lose some time on the day. Alexander Vinokurov as well, a stage attack, but he dropped a lot of time as well as we take you back through how things unfolded on this longest stage of this year's Tirreno Adriatico at 243 kilometers.
Really to get things going there with that break. BMC doing a bunch of work. Then we saw Jose Serpa attacking from the field, trying to make his way up to the breakaway. Later going off the road and luckily making it through pretty unscathed.
Alexander Vinokurov and Enrico Gasparotto, really the two big Astana riders who launched attacks late in the stage today. This was part of the six-man breakaway that defined the day. Rosado leading the way most of the time there, but that break would eventually come apart.
And this is still on that final climb. Kirienka saying, guys, it's been fun, but I gotta go.
And then Vincenzo Nibali of the Liquid Gas team attacking Michele Scarpone here. And it would be Benoit Vaugrenard of the Française des Jeux team. He would try and make a move, but this was one of the classic moments of the day as Scarpone got onto the back of Vincenzo Nibali, then rode right by him, then got up to the leader and didn't even pause. He went right by Vasil Kirienka and eventually rode away to the win in stage number 4 with a pretty healthy margin at the line. So Michele Scarpone hoping to defend his title in Tirreno Adriatico from a year ago, and now after 4 days and 3 stages left to go, he's got a 14-second lead, and he's got a much bigger advantage over some of the more marquee names like a Cadel Evans, Linus Gerdemann, a George Hincapie, the true GC threats, and that's exactly what he needs as his team turns to try and defend the overall blue leader's jersey that he'll pull on in just a few moments.
It's going to be a really tough day in the saddle for his entire team the next couple days to defend that jersey.
And this is what's in store for tomorrow, stage number 5. It's another pretty long stage at over 200 kilometers. However, it has been shortened from 234 to 216 because of poor road conditions due to some of the inclement weather they've had, and they've taken out one of the toughest climbs, and that could be key.
Well, they've taken out some of the tough climbing in the middle, but they still have a nasty 15% grade up toward the finish at the end of over a 120-mile day. So it's still going to be another tough day in the saddle for these guys, and I think we're going to see a lot more fireworks tomorrow.
So back-to-back days at over 200 kilometers of racing. We're getting into the very difficult, the very heart of Tirreno Adriatico here in 2010. The race most surely will be decided in these next couple of days. And can Scarpone's team defend this lead?
Once again, you know, they have their work cut out for him, and Michele Scarpone showing that he's the strongest guy in the race. The question is, does he have the team support to hold it together?
The 30-year-old Italian pulls on the leader's blue jersey, and now for Todd Gregulski, I'm Steve Schlanger. We'll see you tomorrow for stage number 5.